It was just a loud boom.
We've had 4 different attacks occur since March 2nd.
Federal investigators are spread out across the city trying to find the bomber.
Under no circumstance should you touch them, move them, or handle them.
It's hard to imagine that there's someone out there putting bombs around in our communities.
You got the bomber. You got the bomber.
This is the culmination of 3 very long weeks for our community.
And it's a little bit past 1:30 Central Time here. I want to welcome everyone to this special edition of CBS 11 on Facebook Live. I'm Ken Molestina. Certainly a sigh of relief in our state's capital today here in Texas with the death of the man who police say is responsible for a string of explosions across Austin.
It has been a long, almost 3 weeks for the community of Austin as we have dealt with package bombs and other types of bombs that have been placed throughout our community. We have seen members of our community that have lost their lives and others whose lives have been forever changed due to significant injuries. Our heart remains with you as you go through your healing process and your time of sorrow, and we stand by you and with you in your time of need.
And of course, the terror, it all started March 2nd. We want to take a look back now at how all of this played out from the beginning, and we want to take it from how it ended. So have a look at this.
As members of the Austin Police Department SWAT team approached the vehicle, the suspect detonated a bomb inside the vehicle, knocking one of our SWAT officers back, and one of our SWAT officers fired at the suspect as well. The suspect is deceased.
Overnight, the men authorities say terrorized Austin for nearly 3 weeks. 23-year-old Mark Condit blew himself up on a frontage road in Round Rock, just outside of Austin. In his first attack, March 2nd, Anthony House died when a package left on his porch exploded. The second and third bombs exploded March 12th when 17-year-old Draylon Mason was killed, his mother injured, also by a porch bomb. Hours later, a third bomb seriously injured a 75-year-old woman at her home. The bombings seemed to stop, but on March 18th, a fourth explosion injured 2 men riding their bicycles in a southwest Austin street after they tripped a wire, setting off the bomb. In that attack, investigators said the bomber showed a new level of sophistication by using a different kind of explosive.
It is very possible that this device was a device that was activated by someone either handling, kicking, or coming in contact with a tripwire that activated the device. So that changes things.
The fifth blast was on March 20th inside a FedEx facility in Schertz, 60 miles south of Austin. A handler there received minor injuries. Now the entire community is hoping this is all over with.
We have seen members of our community that have lost their lives and others whose lives have been forever changed.
And we do have a team of reporters in the Austin area. They are working every angle of this story. Right now, though, we want to get to Jason Allen. He is live for us in Pflugerville, where the suspect lived. Jason, this neighborhood that you're in right now, this is still a very active scene. So set it for us. What all is going on over there?
Yeah, it is active, and I wish I could show you the neighborhood, but we've been moved back to, I think this is our third location now. So just over to our west right now, a couple blocks from us, is the home where Mark Condit, we believe, lived for the past year. This morning it was just DPS troopers who were around it. About 10 o'clock, a heavy FBI presence moved in with heavily armed agents, as well as an armored vehicle. They were using a PA system to talk to somebody, maybe anybody who might still be in there. At that point, they decided to then evacuate about 4 or 5 blocks around the house. And then again, just here in the last 20 minutes or so, they have closed another street and moved us a bit further back. We saw them unload a robot from the back of a vehicle, and there is still a heavy presence. The last time I was down there closer to the scene within the last 20 minutes or so. Now right here, this is close to the city offices here in Pflugerville. They've directed media to come over here. We're hoping to be able to get some sort of statement about what kind of activity they are doing close to the house, if they've made any progress, if they've made it inside, and if they've found anything. As far as talking to people around here and people who found out there's going to be an evacuation or live nearby, it was a surprise to them already that this had ended up in their hometown. It was even a further surprise, of course, to hear that even though the bomber, the suspected bomber, Mark Condit, was dead, that there would still potentially be a danger here. So there's people here, just like we'd seen in Austin over the past week, still walking around, still a little bit nervous, cautious about where they're walking, what they're seeing on the ground, and the potential that there might still be some explosive devices either at the house or elsewhere around the neighborhood. So we will be standing by here and seeing what kind of information we get from the FBI, the ATF, Pflugerville Police about that operation at the house, and bring that to you, Ken, over the next couple of hours.
Jason, we're going to be, of course, checking in with you throughout the day on CBS 11. But for the purposes right now that we have you here, because we know that, again, everything is unfolding right there behind you. You've been covering this story for a couple of days now. You were down there last week when we had the third explosion. Kind of compare what it's been like as far as the characteristics of some of these neighborhoods where law enforcement have been in throughout the days, because it seems to be changing all the time. But I'm wondering, Jason, you know, what kind of emotion, what kind of feelings these folks are sharing with you?
Well, my sense of it, Ken, from talking to people in all the neighborhoods that were affected to this point, is that everything changed earlier this week on Sunday when there was the tripwire bomb, because that went from something that appeared to be targeted on specific doorsteps to something that was just random in a neighborhood. And then especially, again, when you had things show up at the FedEx shipping facilities and something that could have been dropped off and ended up anywhere, that further impacted just kind of the sense that people were approaching this. So even today, when you talk to people here in Pflugerville who didn't seem to be impacted by any of this until this point, they said over the last few days they were worried about where they were walking, or worried about what they were seeing, or what might be at their kids' school. So it was really over the past few days, as we saw the tactics change, that you started to see a larger group of people that were impacted by what was going on and changed their own behavior, their day-to-day behavior, because of what was happening, Ken.
Okay. All right, Jason, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And of course, like I said, we're going to check in with you a little bit later on. Folks, once again, we want to remind you we are live on Facebook, so make sure to get your comments in. If you have any questions, we'd love to take those. We're going to be talking about this for a little bit longer here. Right now, joined by two gentlemen. I want to go ahead and introduce them for you. We got Clint McNear, former Garland detective and current terrorism law enforcement consultant. Also joining us here in studio, Rich Emberlin, retired Dallas SWAT officer and criminal intelligence expert. So, guys, thanks again for coming in to chat with us here on Facebook Live and sort of debrief everything that's been going on. Needless to say, a lot has happened in a short amount of time. Let's talk a little bit about where this investigation goes right now, because as we know, we just saw Jason's live report. We've got authorities in Pflugerville. They're going through the home, the neighborhood. What concerns do you think law enforcement might have right now that perhaps there's more people involved, or that perhaps there are more bombs out there?
I think going through that house, Jason's going to be down there maybe for a couple of days, wouldn't you say? I mean, they're going to, if they come across anything suspicious, and those people are going to be out of their homes for a couple of days, because they're going to go very methodically. You know, when they've got Ted Kaczynski, they found a bomb under his bed, you know, so you have to be real careful with these guys.
Okay. Yeah, did you want to add to that?
You know, I think people want to immediately have an immediate sigh of relief, and this is all over and everything's done.
Right.
There could still be bombs en route, in delivery. There could still be devices he left somewhere with someone with this much evil in their heart, or the deviant means he was doing it. Yeah. I think for another 36 or 48 hours, until we're certain there may not be other devices out there and they are able to confirm he was a lone actor, I think the huge sigh of relief is not quite, we're not ready for that just quite yet. Right,
and that's one of the things that we heard in one of the news conferences earlier today, still asking people to stay vigilant. The police chief down there, Chief Manley, asking people to keep their eyes and ears open. Of course, this whole see something, say something sort of mantra that we keep hearing about here. Let's talk a little bit about the possibility of maybe a copycat. Is that something that, you know, people should be worried about?
They should definitely be concerned about that. That Goodwill deal, that was an artillery simulator, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right, and that one was not
related, no, but, you know, why did that end up there, you know? I think absolutely, we don't know what this kid's motivations were. He's probably just a guy on the computer all the time. You can Google this stuff, it's no secret, and build stuff like this. He did a lot of smart things, but he did a lot of stupid things, you know, and got himself caught and blown up. But
well, we know, actually, I'm going to save that question here for a second, because you backed up into something interesting. You said a kid who was on the computer who can see all this stuff online on the internet.
Sadly, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what we know so far, at least about the pattern in which, you know, he was setting off these explosives. What does that tell us about, and again, authorities down there are going to try and figure this out, and they will. Both federal and local authorities are going to figure this out. But based on what we know so far about him, about at least his mode in which he did all this stuff, what does that tell us about him? You know, he had the package bombs at first that were laid out on porches. Then it got sort of turned sophisticated, police said, you know, with the tripwire, and then the package through FedEx. What does that tell us about his ability to sort of build explosives and set them off?
My initial response when the packages were being delivered, they appeared very targeted, and it seemed to be he was developing a signature, what we call a signature.
Okay.
One thing that concerned me initially about those packages are delivering a package that is motion activated, motion sensor as a trigger. There is some level of sophistication there to be able to do that without inadvertently becoming a suicide bomber. Right. And I felt like he was developing a signature maybe, or seeing a pattern there of maybe what his agenda may be. When the tripwire went, really, you know, it showed that he's willing to build an indiscriminate device. And at that point, you know, if I kill a kid, if I kill a child, if I kill someone walking to school or to work in the morning, I don't care. I want to harm somebody. And I think the law enforcement there did an incredible job of not getting tunnel visioned or focused on trying to stereotype or stay tunnel visioned. And they evolved with the investigation, and where the facts went led them.
Yeah, let's take a moment here. I want to pull up that surveillance video from the FedEx office where we got our first look at him, where he was wearing some sort of a disguise. I believe he had a wig on him and some gloves. Obviously, that's not how he looks. This is what he was wearing when he delivered that package. Does that give us any insight into maybe his motive, his methods, how he was doing stuff? The fact that he went in there with a wig and some gloves and really a disguise.
Certain amount of brazenness, you know, he's getting comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, they just happened to knock off his tag on his car and figured it out, started pinging him. And one of the great things law enforcement did down there, and it was state, local, federal rangers, they had 500 down there, all working in concert. When they let him leave that hotel, you know, or they could have had another mass casualty event.
Yeah. You surprised at all that he had a bomb with him when police tried to move in? The SWAT team tried to move in. We heard that, and he detonated it. Is that typical of maybe someone like this, that they're near an explosive?
We call
themselves?
them 1%ers. They have this attitude of, hey man, I'm on a one-way trip. If I get hung up by the cops or jammed up, he cooked it off, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that sociopath mindset, his arrogance and his being a sociopath led him to that comfort level that he could go in there and get that package sent without being undetected. But to take his own life, we see often these people, they attack soft targets because they don't want to be confronted with force. They take a cowardly action to carry out their terror. And then when they are confronted with law enforcement or force, they take their life. I wasn't surprised by that.
In this day and age, with all the technology that we have, all the different surveillance capabilities that law enforcement has to them, how would you say the response has been to getting us to this point where he was identified? We heard earlier today, the Austin police chief said within the last 24 to 36 hours is when they really zeroed in on this Condit kid, and then they moved in. Is that kind of what you would expect as far as a timeline? To name a suspect, move in, find him, keep an eye on him?
Yeah, we've got some pretty neat tricks, you know, to track people down. And once they figured out who he was, it's easy to keep an eye on him. But there's some really neat surveillance techniques out there. I mean, there's the usual stuff, pinging cell towers and stuff like that.
Right, and Governor Abbott actually tweeted about that. Said that's what they were doing with him.
I'm sure they did. Yeah. But they've got other things so it didn't surprise me once they figured out who he was that they zeroed in on him.
I think they managed the investigation well, the integrity of it. Often the public demands to know details as they play out, and oftentimes to maintain the integrity of that investigation, we may not share everything we had. We saw in the Beltway Sniper, early on, it got released about a white box truck. And every white box truck in North America was getting jacked by the police.
That's right.
And it turned out 2 weeks later, it had absolutely nothing to do with that. And there was a lot of resources.
Crown Vic or something?
It was a blue Crown Vic, but there were so many resources and time and manpower to a white box van that was completely irrelevant. And could that have sped up that process? And they did a great job here.
I want to talk a little bit also about this mentality. We were talking off camera just before we got started here about this idea of a serial bomber. You know, the definition of that word and how somebody fits into that and sort of the characteristics of that. This is a serial bomber that we were talking about, correct? Or is there some sort of
you know, I think you can attach a label to it once you have multiple offenses, whether it's a serial rapist, a serial sniper, serial bomber, serial shooter. It's maybe a sexy label somebody likes to add to it. But when you have multiple offenses similar in nature, I think the label can be appropriate. Determining why that serial person carried out the motive, was it an agenda, or are they just a sociopath that enjoys wreaking havoc and watching themselves on the media? I think that's yet to be determined.
Right, okay.
Like Clint was talking about earlier about arsonists. You know, we have found so many cases of people setting fires and coming back and watching the place burn down, watch the fire department work.
Yeah.
They get a sick pleasure from that. I don't understand it. I'm glad I don't, but
sure.
You know, this guy probably enjoyed going home and going, I did that.
Right. Well, and like you said, that's kind of a signature also of someone who does this kind of stuff. I was curious as to the investigation, where it goes to now. You guys know, usually when a profile is developed and they try and figure out motive, reasons why. Where does this go now? I mean, how do we find out why this guy decided to do what he did?
Same way you'd probably do a homicide investigation, start talking to family.
Yeah, one of the big things that was hugely important to me is victimology. I would study the victims as much as I would the suspect to figure out, is there a motive, why these pattern of victims, why these specific people? There's going to be search warrants executed, I would imagine, for many days in many locations, and they're going to be mining data from his handheld devices and computers and what he was searching, what his interests were, what his background is, and I think probably over the next 2 to 3 days we will have a clear picture of, is this a troubled sociopath kid? Is this somebody with a set agenda? I've heard everything out there from religion to race to anti-abortion, and I think all that'll come out in the next few days.
And he left his Facebook intact and all his hard drive stuff intact.
Yeah.
If he thought he was going to be killed that night, I know he didn't think he was going to get killed this morning.
Right. Well, that's why I was asking, the fact that he had the bomb with him. If,
he
if
was
that
on
is
an
indicative
operation,
of
he
anything,
thinks.
yeah. Which, by the way, a SWAT officer was hurt as a result of that.
Yes.
He is expected to be okay, though, so there's some good news there. A lot of comments are coming in on Facebook right now, folks, so just go ahead and keep those coming. I'm not going to read every one of them because there's a lot, but guys, I'll tell you, a lot of folks talking about there's a lot of hate in this world, people sounding like they're afraid, many people just shocked that this kind of thing is going on. What do you say to the folks in our communities, specifically, that may be affected by this? It sounds really scary, and I don't want to be the person to tell people everything's okay, because it doesn't sound like everything's okay. But how do you talk to folks, and how do you think the people of communities should go about their daily lives?
Generally, everything is okay, but there are bad people in the world, and sadly, there'll be another school shooting at some point. When they had the last one, I said, sadly, they'll have another one, and they just had one, and the officer did a great job on that second one. But it just keeps happening. Yeah. But it's a dangerous world, but there's a silent majority, that's completely safe, and keep your head on a swivel. Don't, walk around with your earbuds and head down on hiking trails. And I see so many people making themselves victims, by just looking like easy targets. Make yourself a hard target.
Yeah. You want to add to that, Clint?
Yeah, one of the things I hope comes out of this is the relationship across America between law enforcement and the community has really been fractured. I mean, it's been a full-fledged divorce almost. Yeah. And the people in that community were starved for police attention and professionalism and in the safety of law enforcement. And I can tell you every cop down there was not going to rest until they could catch this guy and ensure not one more person was injured from it. And I hope that this can cause maybe some healing between the community and law enforcement, that this is a collaboration, and community policing is nothing new. It's been around since the 60s. We have to work together. We have to live together, and we're all in this mess together. And I hope people can see that we're there to protect, and that officer running up there knowing there's probably a bomb in that car, sprinting to that car to take action. That's heroic actions there, and
that's what they sign up to do. And the loudest mouths are the first ones to call the police when they get scared too.
Right. Well, we did hear throughout this entire ordeal the police over and over just reaching out to the community, asking them specifically if they see anything suspicious to call 911, if they're not expecting a package and one is at their doorstep or a backpack, to call them in. And so you're saying that it's that kind of collaboration that ultimately leads to resolutions in these cases, right?
And that's what I find most frustrating. We found after San Bernardino, the neighbor knew for an extended period of time that they were up to no good, that there was evil intent being developed in that home, and they didn't want to report it out of fear or concern or whatever. And that's how we stop this thing from happening repeatedly. And it's the trust in law enforcement, and it's law enforcement respect to go out there and handle those things. If we may find somebody was aware of this kid, if they would have called, law enforcement would have done a knock and talk, or maybe knocked him down earlier.
And we would have a reason for contact, because people call us first responders. We're second responders. Citizens are first responders.
The neighbors, right?
Right,
Yeah.
the neighbors. We'll be the second responders, and if it gets bad enough, as a SWAT guy, I tell people I was a third responder. You know, it's the people, they see everything. We have cameras in different, parts of different cities, but everybody has eyes, and if you see something, say something. Doesn't make you a bad person. You're not going to get in trouble, and we're not going to tell who told.
I mean, this is just one of those cases that really, like you said, I mean, it was a collaboration of so many different people in the community and law enforcement. But when we talk about law enforcement, what do you all make of this unprecedented response from the federal authorities, both the FBI and the ATF? I mean, they just converged down in Austin and really saturated that entire area. What do you make of that response?
Well, we all work in concert. We have, Joint Terrorism Task Force officers with ATF and FBI, all the different federal agencies, and they have to work together to get, not all departments know an enormous wealth of information about explosives, so we call the ATF.
What can we learn from this moving forward? I'm sure this is something that probably will be referred to later on down the road, unfortunately, in case something like this happens again. But what has this entire experience so far? And by the way, we completely understand this is not over by a long shot. Mm-hmm. But up to the point that we're at right now, we've seen a lot, we've heard a lot, we know a lot more than we did, March 2nd. What has this taught us about this kind of investigation, this kind of a crime that maybe we could use down the line?
It's opened my eyes, and it's kind of back to your first question, is 25 years ago, the communication between various branches of law enforcement at times was almost non-existent. And the collaboration between the United States Marshal Service, ATF, the FBI, DPS, and all the local agencies is incredible. It was a smooth operation. Every person used their strength to be involved in this, and I hope that only continues, because
we have to share the information.
Mm-hmm. when the Unabomber and some of these people are able to perpetuate their crimes for decades, and something like this is able to be culminated and ended for various reasons. But I think it makes my heart smile that the community and law enforcement and all the branches of law enforcement work together on this.
They swarmed on
resolution, sure. We had a comment here on Facebook just recently. Molly Malone was talking about the two roommates. I know you guys had mentioned that earlier. How could they not have known anything? How much of that part of the investigation you think is going to focus on the roommates and what they may or may not have known?
I'm sure they're being talked to right now. It's highly possible they didn't know a thing.
Is it really, though?
It is. I mean, he was at that hotel, but it's also, they are probably one of the guys that should have said, hey, man, that dude was always acting weird, and he was always Googling, bomb-making devices and initiators and stuff like that. I don't want to judge those guys, they haven't been charged.
Right.
They're not even suspects. They're just being interviewed, I'm sure.
I would suspect there's some significant questioning and delving into their own personal business will be done before they're exonerated completely. If we're under the same roof, common sense would tell you we may not see each other, we may work opposite shifts, but I'm oftentimes quite aware at least of what kind of person you are.
Look, William Harlan right now saying the lone bomber suspect didn't act alone. There's no way. There's a lot of people saying that.
Right.
That seems to be a common sort of opinion with a lot of folks.
We've all had roommates in college or even after college and been married. You always have a general idea of what's going on with your roommate. So, and I'm sure they could probably justify a search warrant on their hard drives. And
I think it's too early to tell. Lone actor, oftentimes when we put the serial label on someone outside the Beltway sniper, the Unabomber, the BTK, a lot of these serial attacks are the loner type sociopath person that perpetuate their crime alone, and I think it's just kind of too early to say.
And certainly we don't want to put the cart before the horse here. This is a lengthy investigation that we know has to play out. They've got to do what they got to do, but because we're talking here and taking opinions and hearing these are questions that pop up a lot of times. So as we try and put some perspective to all of this, we do need to answer some of these questions.
Well, when Timothy McVeigh blew up the Murrah building, all of a sudden the guy named Nichols up there found himself in prison for the rest of his life. He had help.
So as far far as and you know, we'll start wrapping it up here, but as far as the bombs are concerned, the explosives here, what do we know about? I mean, you said these were ones that could be made anywhere, right?
As we walked in here today, I believe the Texas Attorney General was reporting information that some of the material was purchased at a local Home Depot.
Yeah.
And I teach a course to law enforcement and to some civilian personnel about awareness, and we talk about there's soda bombs, there's Mentos bombs, there's anything in your home almost can be used as a device to injure someone. And when you add in the equation of shrapnel, you make a device that can kill someone. And that's the scary part about this, is how readily available and the knowledge that's on the internet. And I think at some point it probably turns the narrative in the country of just how much is on the internet that there's scary information out there.
And Clint will tell you, I didn't have a lot of respect for explosives when I first started on the department. I went to a school out in New Mexico Tech put on by Homeland Security, and I thought, oh, 1 pound pipe bomb, what could that do? Boy, the blast radius is huge. The brisant's coming off of that. You put nails and screws and bolts on it, you're going to get a lot of people killed.
Yeah, well, in this case, two people have been killed, obviously, and several
just doesn't take a lot.
Others hurt, yeah. So, and I think that's what adds to the fear that so many folks had down there, in Austin. Specifically, the 2 gentlemen that were just riding their bike, out on the street, and they tripped a wire, and there was another one. So clearly, something that had a lot of people down there still a lot of fear.
When people are just randomly targeted, like the sniper, that's scary. It's scary for us too.
Sure.
We get sniped at every once in a while, and it's just somebody just picking off somebody just because they can.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're sociopaths.
And as this drug on and a community living in fear with their shoulders hunched up and concerned, do I even go check my mailbox? When that perpetuates over from days to weeks, I mean, that'll cripple a community. And it's with the easiness of something to build. We see on Google the Tannerite videos of people blowing their arms off and their legs off.
I've seen plenty of those. Yeah, right.
And it's something that easy and that stupid, and it comes down to a lot of times of personal responsibility, accepting responsibility of everybody's wanting to blame the guns or mental illness, and a lot of it comes down to accepting personal responsibility for what you're doing. Or is my roommate crazy Googling bombs? Do I need to do something about it?
Well, as we know, this investigation is going to continue for a while longer. We're going to stay on top of the story and continue to bring our viewers a lot of perspective and all the latest details. But gentlemen, thank you so much for coming into the studio, for chatting with us, and for helping us understand a little bit more. When things like this happen so quickly, so fast, a lot of times what's missing is some of the perspective, and some inside information. So that's where you all come in, and we certainly appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us and answering some questions. So
thanks for having us.
Thanks again, and hopefully we don't have to talk about this anytime soon again.
Let's talk about something else.
Let's talk about something else. That's right. Guys, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, this story, folks, it continues right now over on our website, of course. That is cbsdfw.com, and across all of our social media platforms. Our team of reporters, they are in Round Rock. They are in Pflugerville right now, working every angle to give you a complete picture of this Texas terror. For right now, we say thanks so much for watching. And remember that we will see you throughout the day on air and online. Take care, everyone.